Good day, learners! This is Dane K. Marcelia, and my lesson for today is all about the segmented worms, or also called as the phylum Annelida, like this cute little earthworm. So now, let us proceed to our learning objectives. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to first, identify the characteristic of segmented worms. Second, describe the three classes of phylum Annelida. Third, illustrate how segmented worms reproduce. Fourth, define the relationship between tapeworms and segmented worms. Then organize a preventive measure caused by parasitic worms. And lastly, develop a viable treatment for a serious annelid infection. Okay, so before we will go through with our discussion, can I ask on what are your observations about the pictures? So yeah, it's all about the different characteristic of the phylum Annelida. So, what are the general characteristic of segmented worms? So, these are the summarized characteristic of segmented worms. So first of all, just like the other worm, they are triploblastic, meaning they have three tissue layers to their body. Secondly, they are coelomate. They have the true coelom that many other advanced organisms like ourselves have. Next, they have something called metamerism or unspecialized segmentation. So this is the first worm we're seeing with true segments. So the tapeworms, they kind of look like they're segmented, but they are not really classified as segmented worms. So yeah, let's talk more about tapeworms later. And also they have something called setae, and that's one or more, see it in the picture. Here, sa kana dira nga picture. So in this worm, there are all little hairs that stick out, and earthworms actually do have this as well, but they have only few. And some of this worm in these phylums, kaning na I circle nga red, okay, have tons of setae. So anatomy of segmented worms. Segmented worms are bilaterally symmetrical. Their body consists of head region, a tail region, and a middle region of numerous repeated segments. Each segment is separate from others by a structure called septa. Each segment contains a complete set of organs and also has a pair of hooks and bristles. In marine species, a pair of parapodia. So as what you have seen in the picture, this one, kanang na-circle ni red, it is actually an earthworm. And it is one of the classic example of annelids. So we all know naman that annelids are all the segmented worms. That means they have segments in their bodies like the trains of each car segment. So they are long, and each segment carries something special because they actually have loads of body pairs that duplicated in each segment. That means each segment can act on their own. If one segment is damaged, some annelids can go on living. Unlike as humans, if we lose a part of our body, we might be in a terrible situation. So fun fact, learners, did you know that annelids breathe through their skin? That's because they don't have a lungs and they have a special skin for getting oxygen. So what are the kinds of annelids? Well, there are three classes of annelids. The first one is the class Polychaeta, or the bristleworms. There are marine annelids and they are usually hairy, and they are less popular compared to others. Next is the class Oligochaeta or Oligocata, or the marine freshwater and terrestrial annelids. Unlike bristle worms, they have less bristles. One example is the popular earthworm. And lastly is the class Hirodinia. They're also marine freshwater and terrestrial worms. So one example of these are the leeches. We might not like this one because they could bite you and suck your blood. So let's take a look at a class Polychaeta. So we have a pulley here. Wait. Asa to? We have a pulley here. Kana. That means many. And when we say chaeta, or chaeta, that means a kind of bristle that you're seeing along here. Kani. Muna siya. So this kind of marine animals, this Polychaeta have tons of them. Daghan kini silang bristles. So, and tons of different types of them. So, you can actually click the link below kani to see a lot of crazy diversity of marine worms. So the next one, the example of class Polychaeta is that here, kaninga picture. Kana. So in this diagram, it shows the mouth. The mouth of the worm. And the water's moving in, but the worm's going to go up this way. Pababo siya dira. So, unfeed. And here are some examples of real versions of class Polychaeta. So, the next one is class Polychaeta reproduction. So, when we talk about this class, we're going to talk about the reproduction because it's a little bit different from what you may think of an earthworm. So they are dioecious, and they have something called tropocore larva. So this is a little cylindrical kind of larva. So some of them also develop specialized segments containing gametes. So fertilization in this class usually external in water. So epitox, segments are released and gametes burst out, and indirect development. So trochophore larvae swims around until it goes into adult form by adding segments. So some polychaetes also reproduce asexually. So epitopes are essential buds, then give clues to ancestral origin of segmentation. So again, some polychaetes, however, can reproduce asexually by budding. So the next one is the class Oligocata. So from the word itself, oligo, saan na ni? Basta sa kanima ba oligo? Oligo, it means few. So meaning, there is very small chitae. So I have actually a diagram of an earthworm here sa kani. Dara. Since I already discussed naman na about earthworm, so let's go through na lang with the next slide. So, the earthworm reproduction. Earthworms are hermaphroditic male and female organs in the same animal. So when mating, two worms are held together by mucus secreted by clitellum. So annelids like earthworm made by copulation. Kani. Ay, asa na to? So samaan ng nasa picture, two worms which are attracted by each other's secretion lay their bodies together with their heads pointing opposite direction. So the fluid is transferred from the male pore to the other worm. So the next slide is all about the class Herodinia. So they have fixed, asa na to? Ay, kuan pa data, earthworm reproduction. So these are the detailed explanation about the reproduction of earthworm. So the next slide is all about the class Herodinia. So they have fixed number of segments that makes them different from other types of segmented worms, and also they don't have setae or parapodia, and they have sucker their posterior end, and they are predominantly freshwater, but they can also live in all oceans or moist soil. So they do not also burrow or crawl. They actually move similar to this picture, like this one. Kana. So, another fun fact. Did you know that leeches have 34 brains? A leech internal structure is divided into 34 separate segments, and each of these segments has its own brain. And anak ka-amazing si leeches. So, leech reproduction. Leeches are simultaneously hermaphrodites, lack a free-living larval stage, internal fertilization through copulation, and development occurs in a cocoon similar to Oligochaetes or Iligocata. So, tapeworms. So tapeworms are flat segmented worms that live in the intestine of some animals. Animals can become infected with these parasites when grazing in pasture or drinking contaminated water. So, am I considered a segmented worm or a tapeworm? Is a tapeworm considered to be a segmented worm? Let's answer it through the next slide. So tapeworm as segmented worm. Tapeworms are long segmented worms of the class Cestoda, which comprise one of three classes of parasitic worms. These are worms that requires a host within to mature. So tapeworms are kinda look like segmented worms, but they are really not. They are not classified as segmented worms, but it is still related to a segmented worm. Do you know what I mean? Related ra gyapon sila usag-usa because just like the segmented worm, ang tapeworm kay mo absorb siya nutrients through its skin parehas sa earthworm. So, the harmful effects of segmented worms to humans and its prevented measure. So the first one is the bristle worms. So of all many species of worms, the bristle worms is one of the most dangerous. It is elongated segmented worms and belong to the class Polychaeta or class Polychaeta. They can grow up to 1 foot inches length or 30 centimeters and a width of 1 inch or 2.54 centimeters. So each segment contains a pair of bristles. So The bristleworm spines, when touched, can sting and cause are the following: pain, burning sensation, redness, swelling, and rashes. So these are here is an example of a bristleworm sting. And the preventive measure for this one is that you can wear some protective swimming gear. Clean the skin carefully so as to not break off any of the spine. Third is that remove bristles with tweezers or adhesive tape. A facial peel may be used over the spine or a thick layer of rubber cement. So once the rubber cement has dried, peel it off to remove or to pull the residual pines out of the skin. So the next segmented worms that has a harmful effects to humans is the leech. So leeches are carriers of viruses and bacteria. Some of the symptoms that you may feel when infected by leech are the following: painless bleeding, bruising, itching, burning, irritation, and redness. And according to my research, HIV and hepatitis B were isolated sana to? Were isolated leeches pulled from fishermen in Africa. Viruses may remain leeches for as long as 5 months. Inana siya kadugay. And studies have also shown that malaria is capable of replicating in the red blood cells that a leech ingests. So these are the this is an example sa mga leeches bite kani. So these are the prevented measure. So first is wearing long pants, preferably tuck it into your socks or wear gaiter. Next is wear a long sleeve shirt to minimize exposed protection. And lastly, apply a disinfectant and cover the bite area to minimize any risk of infection. So the last one is the tapeworm. Deinoyosis in humans is a parasitic infection caused by tapeworm species. So this is especially dangerous complication of invasive tapeworm. So infections that can result in headaches and visual impairment, as well as seizures, meningitis, hydrocephalus or dementia, and death can occur in severe cases of infections. Sometimes tapeworms also cause symptoms such as nausea, weight loss, diarrhea, fatigue, and abdominal pain. So these are the preventive measure. So first, wash your hands with soap and water before eating or handling food and after using the toilet. Second, avoid eating or undercooked pork, beef, and fish. Third, thoroughly cook meat at temperatures of at least 145 Fahrenheit or 63 degrees Celsius to kill tapeworm eggs or larvae. And lastly, when traveling in areas where tapeworm is more common, wash and cook all fruits and vegetables with safe water before eating. So, these are the possible treatment for all the parasitic segmented worms that I've discussed. So for bristleworm infection, apply topical acetic acid, vinegar, or isopropyl alcohol. If severe inflammation and continual burning sensation develop, apply hydrocortisone cream 3 times per day. For leech infection, apply antibiotics such as third-generation cephalosporin along with aminoglycosides and fluoroquinolones. So, next is the most common treatment for tapeworm infection involves oral medications that are toxic to adult tapeworm. So, including praziquantel, beltracide, albendazole, albenza, netroside, alinia, and lastly, consult a doctor about treatment with available medications. So you can actually visit the link that is provided below for you to really understand the segmented worms and also kani nga mga tambal kani gisgud diri sa possible treatment kung asa ni sila mapalit, then unsa ni ka effective kani nga mga antibiotics. So, and that's it. Thank you for listening and may God bless us all.